Okay. Welcome everybody to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of Lichfield District Council. Welcome to Councillor Wallen, who I believe is watching tonight. That's what he told me, and hopefully a few more as well. Welcome also to Martin Munyer. It's his first meeting here, and I certainly welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I've done some papers, but I didn't expect him to be an expert on Overview and Scrutiny yet. But the odd question put by naive people, I said, well, I didn't know this. I'm going to ask this question. They're the ones that we all thought we should have asked, a year ago. We're hoping somebody will ask it. So no pressure, but that'd be great. Apologies for absence. I've got Anne Hughes. Have you got any other?
We've also had apologies from Councillor Ho, Chair.
Okay. And then declarations of interest. Anybody got any particular declarations of interest? If they suddenly realise they have later on, my attention, of course. Then the next item, there's the minutes of the previous meeting, just for accuracy. I'll go through pages 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Have they agreed? Yeah. Yeah, okay, I'm not thinking. I was definitely yes there, for the majority. And the next item is health matters. The meeting from not the meeting I had yesterday with the Health and Care Overview and Scrutiny Committee at the county, but from the one prior to that. The items there are listed for you that we looked at. And number 4, the birthing services in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent. In other words, the freestanding midwifery-led birthing service at Samuel Johnson was an issue that I thought may be particular interest to members. And although the consultation was due to end on March the 2nd, the items that were raised, they wanted to extend the consultation on particular issues there, and that's what's happened. But we haven't got the result yet. So that's there. I asked questions about. I asked about other places that were not listed, where there were meetings with people that are on my report. And also report on the issues on the work programme and what our committees do. See, some of the committees, district and borough overview and scrutiny committees, some of them are like community committees, so they have all sorts of things like food waste, as I point there, or 20-mile-per-hour schemes. Well, what we have is the health task group that will specifically look at issues to feed back to the county, rather than these sort of more general items. And the work programme is there, but it's early days like ourselves, so it's the beginning of the next municipal year. Are there any easy questions on that one I can answer? Or okay, moving on. They're quite on task groups. That's agenda item 5, which is notes on task groups, of course, task and finish groups. And there you've got the local health matters, but Councillor Yoke, the Vice Chair, chairs. Do you want to?
We had Staffordshire County Council join, a few members joining us. We had Better Health Staffordshire, and we're discussing about obesity issues in the district. And what was really concerning was that child obesity was rising in the area. And it's not just the private areas, also affluent areas it was very high in numbers as well. We talked about funding available. So as on action notes, I have spoken to the health officer who would be in contact with them with regards to funding for districts. Staffordshire Parish Council Association also attended, and we're talking about how parish and district can work together to address health activities, so how to address health issues, how we can improve mental and physical health as well. So it was really interesting. Their presence is really important, especially after LGR. There will be a lot of work counting on the parish councils to deliver activities local area.
Yeah, thank you. The notes are not minutes, but I've asked for the change of the word there. Councillor Woodward expressed an interest of it as a trustee to be changed to declare, just for clarity in that. Before the meeting, in fact, that I had, the previous meeting, which looked at obesity, I did email the Director of Public Health, Dr. Richard Harley, about those issues that suddenly, is this right, Little Aston? suffering from that, same as some other areas where there are evidence of deprivation. And he said, I pointed this out, he said, reflect on how this is described in the final version. This is the report, annual report, in the final version to avoid any confusion. So we may bring some clarity to that observation at that stage. So we'll see. Now I'll move on then to the Yep. No, I'm just going to explain. I've only got one good ear, and I have no idea where the sound is coming from. So,
but can I just pick up for what Leona was saying about obesity, and then the specific reference to limiting takeaways in the schools? Seems to me there is a potential planning issue there, and we're going through a local plan consultation. Can we just make sure that that point is the team that's sort of working on the local plan, they're alive to that? Because you can have, as I'm saying, a local health policy. And I know this has come up before where we've had certain councillors and members of the public want to object to a KFC or a McDonald's, and it's very difficult to do it on planning grounds. But if there's a clear health policy in your local plan, that can help. So I'd ask if that specific point could be drawn to the attention of the team that's looking for the local plan. Maybe we can do something proactive along the health lines.
I don't know if that works elsewhere. I mean, as it happens, I told my stepchildren, there's no way I would ever take them to McDonald's ever. The only time I've been to McDonald's is to use the toilet. That was years ago.
Right.
And then you also may have had as councillors surveys from various organisations, and it's asking about McDonald's and KFC and all these others. And what's your view as a councillor? Well, my view is that I'm here to allow these things to happen. My personal view is I wouldn't have anything to do with them. So, but I don't know what the success is on.
Well, my understanding of the principle, I think it's if there is something in your local plan about, I suppose you're talking about the number of fast food outlets and the concentration of them, the number per capita or whatever. If you have a policy along those lines, and then there is an application in the future, and as a community, as a council, it gives you some planning grounds to be able to object.
Well, I just don't know, but I think it's important we can ask that is taken into consideration and give us some feedback on whether it is realistic, possible.
Yeah, I'd be interested to get that feedback.
Thanks, Chairman. When I was about 14, I was a bit of a nerd, really, because I bought a government publication called the Manual of Nutrition, and I read it from cover to cover. And what it taught me was that it's very important to understand food and the constituents in foods, the foods that are good for you and the foods that aren't particularly good for you. So as a young teenager, I became quite interested in that, and I've sort of carried those principles throughout my life. But it strikes me that young children are not taught about nutrition at all in school. I know this is a bigger item than we can cover at this Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Excuse me. It's a national curriculum thing, really. But I think so many children now are growing up in a world which is dominated by fast food outlets, but also, of course, fast meals at home, parents who don't have time to prepare meals in the way that perhaps our parents did all those years ago. And I think a lot of people are growing up in a vacuum, not knowing, even if they wanted to eat good food, they're not quite sure what that looks like. And I think that big business has now come to dominate the food sphere in a way which is perhaps not terribly healthy. And I mean, I like fish and chips, and I still eat fish and chips occasionally, but it wouldn't be my main meal throughout the course of the week like it is for some people. But I just think that we need to educate people a little bit better than we currently do. As I say, that's not the role of this Overview and Scrutiny Committee, but it's just a general comment about the way that society has perhaps disregarded the importance of decent food. And often eating good food is no more expensive than phoning up Just Eat or one of these other people who will come and deliver it to your door and bring you food. But we're not going to change it here. I know we're not, but I just think that we need to understand the importance of decent nutrition and the knowledge of where to get that nutrition as well.
I think that they are referencing to those sort of things. in the report on obesity to the council, and I'll find out those specifics. Can I just say, at that particular meeting, there's going to obesity, I tried to get on camera, really reaching in front of the council who was talking about this sort of thing. Jackie Cannon's book on the politics of food, which goes way back to 1983, and various reports, and which no government has ever taken any real action on. So yeah, I'm sympathetic to that as a vegetarian since I was 14, as it happens. There you are. And obviously you can't get obese if you're a vegetarian, as you know. And I'll let you have that information if I can.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hill. Councillor Hill represents most takeaways in the country.
That's exactly what.
Paisley.
It's a bit late for Paisley to sort of consider future planning. I don't think there's any space there whatsoever for any more. But one of the things that was I'd like to add is it's not just about the food, it's about the level of degree of activity that children are engaging in during the day and the week and the weekends. And as kids, we would be out virtually all day playing and doing all sorts of things. Now they're on computers and whatever. I don't know how you address that, to be honest, but I don't think it's just purely and simply the food. I think it's a combination of things, to be honest.
To be fair, there's lots of television programs that do actually try and do this. Was one the other day. It's a ghastly program, but at least it was also looking at nutrition and so on. I mean, I had the good old days where one dangerously climbed trees and used real arrows to shoot at your friends and all this sort of thing. I mean, what was wrong with that? You know, because I'm only talking to the survivors of that particular theory. Honestly, you know.
I'll just add.
You're going to talk sense now. You're going to be sensible now, aren't you, Leanne?
I'll say it really quickly, actually. So the active team, literally, the active, they have a lot of activities which I do encourage children to get involved in. So if you look on their website, for who hasn't seen on the active Lichfield website, there are really cheap or free for children to attend activities throughout the week, every week.
So it is available, yeah.
Yes, so it's just getting access. If maybe if we get more promotion on those, that would be really good as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, right. If I move on then to the annual review of the overview scrutiny function, I'll let Will lead on this. It is basically his report, but I'm to blame if you're not very happy with it, insofar as the actual work that's going to go down there. See. Just to point out the recommendations, the committee provided comment and feedback on the annual review 2025-2026, and the committee reflects on the effectiveness. This is the important thing about this committee, the effectiveness of the overview and scrutiny function. If I can get a defence in quite early on, which is that the cabinet does, and I think it's out of its way to consult, not all the time, but invariably consult us. So there's not much point in me calling something in or hoping they'll make a decision then call it in. We actually are consulted in that, so it looks less dramatic, but I do think it makes for better counsel and better decisions for our view, even if they don't always agree with them as a scrutiny committee. I'll say that on record. So, well, Stevenson, thank you.
Perfect. Yes, quite. I've gone and sat down this end because it's a good scrutiny committee. There's no exceptions. All officers are subjected to sitting down this end of the table. So yes, each year we produce this report into the scrutiny function of the council. Under changes to the Local Government Act in 2000, there is a legal requirement for all authorities to have a scrutiny function to hold the council and the executive to account and provide democratic oversight of the decisions of that council. The purpose of this report in front of you today, very simply, is to determine how effectively this committee has been using its time, has been using its resources. It's a chance for the committee to basically do some self-reflection and look at how you've spent the last 12 months providing that democratic oversight that we are there to do, and whether there are any lessons that can be taken from that in terms of areas that maybe need a bit more oversight, where that could be diverted from in terms of where we spent our time. And just to flag up some additions to this report compared to last year, this report now also includes a brief summary of the public submissions to scrutiny, because since last year there is now the availability on the website for members of the public to go and submit those topics for the scrutiny committee to consider. If they are valid topics for scrutiny, they are obviously discussed with the chair. by what I mean by valid topics is sometimes people may use that link to just raise a particular issue and we guide them that actually they should have used this link or that link instead. But if it is a valid suggestion, it gets discussed with the chair and the vice chair, and it could get brought to this committee. But the report is in front of you all, and I'm happy to take any questions on it, or yourself, Chair, as well.
Okay. Well, I'll go section, I think section by section or page by page, really. So the recommendation there, just keep in mind that as well as actually repeated about the effectiveness of overview and scrutiny. On 3.1, their reference to the Local Government Act 2000. I've been doing scrutiny right from day one when it came in, and I thought it was suddenly relieved of the party political decisions which you knew were wrong, and you can't ask the questions of your own party, so you were stuck. So I think scrutiny has been great for local government since 2000 when it came in.
Sure.
Would you disagree?
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm going to agree. But further than that, having been on various versions of the scrutiny committee since I was elected in July 2018, I've certainly seen an improvement over those years. I think this report particularly is very clear and very comprehensive. And more members are contributing now than they did when I first joined the committee, and there were often members who would arrive not having read the papers at all, and they would open the envelope. It was envelopes back then. The first time they'd open the envelope at the meeting, but clearly people are looking at the paperwork beforehand, noting comments and making questions. And I think Cabinet is listening, and we have had some significant changes over the years, over the past year or so, certainly, to the way that final Cabinet decisions have been made. So I think that scrutiny has certainly been improving, and it's certainly a good thing to be doing, so that we identify potential mistakes early and get them corrected before they're actually enacted.
Okay. I do think people are more involved, members are more involved, and the idea of the pre-meeting is to help members if they're, well, I don't think I've been that much help, but there's an opportunity there for members to say, I'd like to ask you about this or ask about that, and I can at least assist about where they could ask those questions on that. If I just mention 3.2, then just that key section there, selective, strategic and evidence led, that's what we're after really. And I would like a report, which I've said I will certainly help to follow up on where we've made recommendations and suggestions, and to see how effective they've been, or not how effective they've been, if they've been taken on board and what the result has been. I realise it's a bit of a big job that, but I'll play my part in that. Will, if you want to come in with anything when I'm saying anything, or 3.3 there, the briefing notes. I think the briefing notes have been useful where there's no need to have a full report or want to be kept up to date. I thought the briefing notes have been good in the past. Leona, please.
I want to ask for on 3.3, is it possible to have a comparison between the previous year and 2026, for example, or future compared to past year on items, briefing notes? You can see, items, how much items have been brought in. It's just to see.
Yeah, absolutely. We can go into that work, and I could present that to members if you're happy for me to email that to you at some point. Once we pull that together, yeah, we can do a comparison of looked at this year compared to last year, for example.
You're not going to use AI, are you?
No, if you look hard enough, there's a point in this report that proves I wrote it with my own two hands. The mistake I've made, you can spot it.
The medium-term financial strategy 3.4 there. Yeah, the reference there, just in that medium-term financial strategy, about the overrepresentation of 65 and over, that sort of thing. Well, it's like elections. They're overrepresented there. They're the ones that go out and vote. They're the ones we concentrate on, isn't it? It's political parties. So, volunteers, it's the voluntary who actually fills the form. I wanted to mention that. The Youth Council there, 3.4, Young Voices event. And we had that only recently, so hopefully that's okay. The LWMTS, and we have a report later on, of course. To your attention. 3.4, housing and homeless strategy. Again, but the empty home strategy is later on, and then we have the report there in June on that. Just services performance. Planning performance progress. Procurement strategy. And the Lichfield District 2050 strategy. We're all assuming there's going to be a 2050, but 3.49 local government reorganisation there, which I've asked to be on every agenda item, even though there may be nothing to discuss, but at least it's there in our minds. And well, so we had this pre-meeting discussion about how we don't overlap with audit and others. We just try and make sure that we're looking at it and in a useful way, and others may want to look at it, say, regarding employment and that sort of thing separately. So 3 point. And then the Birmingham Health and Wellbeing Centre. Now we have followed things up there, by the way, from that particular meeting, where they was going to give us more information. And I don't know whether you can quote from your email that you've had only a short time ago or not. Well, I'm putting you on the spot there. Sorry, it tipped you off when you were over here.
Yes, you could have given me a heads up there. Sorry, Chair. No, yes, as we discussed at the pre-meeting, we followed up with the ICB, the information they promised us between this meeting and the last meeting. And yes, earlier today, in fact, we got that response from the ICB regarding those matters. I can read it out for you if you want.
I just wanted
quite a lengthy email.
Dramatic there, but
Chair, can I just ask whether this email, whether Bill's able to tell us, it covers all 4 items or only some of those?
does it address them whether it's in a good way or a
When's that?
Yes, way or
Less than an hour ago.
I think
There are responses to 4 separate questions, so after a quick
Okay,
glance,
we'll
I'll
look forward to that.
4 items. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think, is it worth recording our disappointment that it took them till 5:20 this evening to make those responses, given that we asked for them at the end of January?
Was it January?
The last meeting was
It's in the January, yeah.
It was the 25th of January.
And I understand. Well,
I think that's
probably
pretty
up twice
pathetic.
as well. So
Yeah.
I forgot them, but yes, I mean, on record now, I recommend the YouTube version of this meeting to be sent to them, perhaps. Already on it, of course. Okay, well, thank you for that. I call in there.
Chair, yeah, I was just going, you're just on that,
Yeah,
on the Birkwood Health and Wellbeing Centre item. I'm just going to make some general point. I think
sorry, yeah, you did say before, and I've sorry.
it was, I think when we do have representatives from outside bodies coming into the committee, I think that's powerful and that works. And it was a poor meeting. The representatives from the ICB didn't perform well and Staffordshire County Council didn't turn up, but it has served a purpose in elevating the issue. We've discussed it for council. You've discussed it on the Staffordshire County Council Health Scrutiny Committee, and so it has served a purpose. But I think that's powerful when we do have those outside bodies coming in. I think you mentioned, I don't know whether it was for the whole committee or the task group with representatives from the taxi operators to come in to talk about how their business is working. I think we need to continue to look at ways of getting outside bodies into the committee.
Well, the last health scrutiny at the county was actually yesterday, so that's why there's no report from me today. But the report that Will had sent to them was again on that same agenda, the same, and this time a county councillor raised the issue of the county council not turning up and asking why. I pointed out why.
Just to interject, sorry, as well, Chair, we have a health scrutiny officers group of officers that meets. I think it's quarterly, and it is an issue that I've flagged with them as well. So I know that it has been conveyed through those channels as well. We have it.
Thank you. And it's not going off the agenda either, as far as I'm concerned. So, members' task groups that's referred there. Lichfield City Master Plan, which Colin Ball has. Medical health matters. And public transport task group. Been a delay trying to get members there, and also this issue with the taxis who have a dispute with the district council. And when I followed up, so maybe we can help in some way. I'm not going to pretend we're a negotiator, but just help in some way. And but the meeting that they're going to have has been put off till another time, so we'll follow that up anyway. And attendance by officers and cabinet there, the list of He attended. Andy Smith was going to be here, but he's gave his apologies as well. Cabinet member, Councillor Andy Smith. It sent Doug in his place. Yeah. 3.9 public suggestions. They have been screening. This is what Bill mentioned earlier on, and the experience we've had is not dissimilar from one of the councils I looked at before, and the issues weren't really for scrutiny at all, but we do look at them each time. I know that Councillor Trent has got a particular interest in this, and yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I just remember when we added, we added the button on the ONS web page to encourage people to suggest a topic. It just strikes me that four suggestions, 3 of which weren't really for ONS, isn't, you know, perhaps what we had in mind. So I don't know if you have any reflections on what more we should be doing, whether we put it by comms more, that people have the option to do this, or
it is a conversation I suppose we could have with comms and see if they could potentially flag up that opportunity is there for residents if they do have an item that they think would benefit from public scrutiny, because I suppose that's the key message to convey, that it's not just it's not an additional complaints or compliments link. There is already a function for that. This is specifically for recommending topics that would benefit from the scrutiny function. So it's just about how we convey that. But absolutely, that's something we can discuss with them.
I suppose it is quite a nuanced message, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not, you don't want it just to promote a flood of complaints or other queries. But, yeah, one to consider, I think, is four suggestions, perhaps.
There's also an opportunity for members of the public to raise issues with their elected representatives. There's a particular thing there, and it looks like, well, this isn't just my ward or whatever. It's actually may be reflected elsewhere. So I've had a case today where there's an issue there, nothing to do with the Hull District Council services, but it's one that I want to follow it up with the NHS. And I thought, well, I want to know the reasons why this rule is in here, and a lot of people must be affected by it. But yeah, I mean, I think the communication to get this.
And it's not necessarily also about the quantity, it can be about the quality. For example, there might have been only 4, but one of those is actually primarily guiding the agenda of the very first public transport task group meeting, because it was about the provision of taxis, which that task group is going to go away and look at. So there has actually been a tangible follow-on from that suggestion. So it's an opportunity that not all councils can afford, and we can demonstrate that it has led to a knock-on effect. So again, it's just about results.
And Chair, building on your point, is it worth reminding councillors then as well that, you know,
I'll try and put some of that. Yeah.
Thanks.
There's still the process you go through to get something that we spend time looking at. But yeah, that's what young.
Just really quick comment on the website. I think on the ONS meeting, that page is really clear actually in bold, where you can click to apply for an item to be looked at from the public. And if you look at the council information page, it's like the top in bold, is really big, which is great as well. So I think it's been emphasised quite strongly already.
I did ask for it to go. It was in one place, but sometimes you couldn't find it. But then I do think it's good now that it's conspicuous. But we'll just keep on trying. That's all. We will pick up things that members of the public would want. You want to say anything else, Will, on the report, or?
Yeah, there was an issue that another councillor had flagged, and I alluded to earlier with the mistake that I've made. So it'd be rude to leave you all in the dark. No, it is just on the boxes at the bottom on the legal implications. I realise we haven't actually filled in the legal implications there, but I have covered them already in the description. In that the legal implications are that councils are required to have a scrutiny committee under the Local Government Act changes in 2000. And I think it has been approved by the monitoring officer.
Yeah, yes. Oh, well, okay, well, the circle around that. Well, we see the monitoring officer, you know, once the A38 has been closed. No, thank you for that then. There's nothing else. I would like a report, working with officers on the report to see what happened to those recommendations and suggestions. We can actually pin it down and compare it 1 year with another. So, yeah, thank you for that. I'll give you time to get back. Yeah. The next item, members, is agenda item 7, which is the LWM business Plan 2026-2027. Lichfield West Midlands Trading Services. How different from my early days as a councillor in the 80s, this sort of thing. So I presume the chief executive will be. Either. They do a presentation, but I've just mentioned the on 3.3 there about the meeting on the 17th of March. I was wondering if there's anything of significance there that what you want to draw to our attention that came out of that meeting that would be useful. That's all. If there's anything happened there.
Okay, which means
The council shareholder advisory group is meeting on the 17th of March. Nothing came out of that particularly. It doesn't matter if you don't know. I just wondered if there was.
No, I do know the outcome, Chair. So that meeting was cancelled, unfortunately, because the
That's significant.
shareholder representative was not available. So that meeting has been put back into the diary for the 31st of this month.
Yeah, all right, 31st.
Yeah. Update is no update.
That's all right. Okay, well, thank you. I just made a note of that. I thought it might have been something dramatic you could share with us, but in that way, you know. So yes, I'll leave it to you to give us an introduction to that.
Thanks, Chair. And I'm here representing Councillor Smith, who, well, two people.
I'll say where he is.
Councillor Smith, I can't say where he is. He's abroad. And Councillor Strachan. Obviously, Lichfield District Council is 100% shareholder in LWM. It's important that there's some level of oversight, both through overview and scrutiny, but also, I think specifically, as you've just alluded to, Chair, through the shareholder advisory group as well, which has been set up off the back of some recommendations, I think that originated in the audit committee, but perhaps here as well, about ensuring that there was cross-party and also some sufficient level of oversight of the direction and travel of that business. Obviously, the whole purpose of the business setting up in the first place is it can operate semi-autonomously and doesn't constantly have a gaggle of councillors overlooking its shoulder telling it what to do, and I think that's a positive for the business. It allows it to get on and deliver outcomes, but also clearly it still needs to be steered ultimately by members. So this is the opportunity to review the 26-27 business plan for LWM. This is entering its 5th year of trading activity, and the recommendations are that you review the business plan and provide feedback to the shareholder representative through me. I'm sure Simon will want to give us some highlights from the previous year, but also set out direction of travel for the coming year. I don't think there's anything wild that we're introducing in there. It's more of the same, but doing it better and expanding where opportunities allow us to.
Okay.
I'll let you do the detail.
Thank you, Councillor Pullen. Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to emphasise the highlights for what we've achieved in 25-26 because, of course, we will have an annual report which normally comes through this group as well. So there'll be an opportunity, I think, around October time for you to do that. That's okay. But as the leader sets out, LWM enters its 5th year as the council's wholly owned traded company in 2026-27. Hopefully, you will all agree continuing to deliver a broad range of services for the district and its residents. The plan is in the normal format as you've seen in previous years, so it sets out the vision, priorities and financial targets for the coming year, building on the track record of supporting council services and generating income. As is always the case, and it's articulated in the plan, all surplus income that LWM achieves in 2026-27 will be returned to the council to support frontline services and the wider community. Our key priorities for the year have been articulated in the plan, and these include increasing profitability, so trying to enable the existing activity to become more net profitable rather than introducing wider new activities, expanding some core trading services, exploring some new commercial opportunities. Members hopefully will have noted where I'm proposing the creation of a building company, and I can explain the rationale behind that if that will be helpful. And then supporting the council's ambitions around temporary accommodation. The council in its annual budget agreed another just under £750,000 to be spent on that activity. LWM will deliver that once more. The plan projects a turnover of just under £7 million, a surplus of just under £500,000, which actually myself and the new finance director it could hopefully be relatively conservative, and we believe we can do a lot better during the year. At the moment, it projects a dividend payment of £100,000 to the council. Lastly, Chair, I'd just say that the plan is underpinned by robust governance, the council retaining strategic oversight and control as a sole shareholder. That's all I'd say in intro.
Okay. Hang on, I'll just ask you one question on the review report, if you like, rather than the actual business plan, which is just on the talking about those sort of things. 3.6 service areas and planning consultancy, including major planning applications. Now there are Chinese walls. If we want to put a planning up, as we've done, planning application for something we want to build within the district council, the planning committee will look at the planning officers and the planning committee will look at it from their particular perspective. So there's a sort of Chinese wall there. It's always been in my view. But I just wonder if that's is it even more difficult with the planning consultancy or not? In the planning consultancy, and then the application comes in, and then it's the same district council decide. I won't say reassurance, but I just wondered how we.
I think, yeah, I think it's even easier actually, and it carves out a separate grouping of individuals who are perhaps even more challenging and actually retain that boundary that we want to exist when we're both the applicant and the local planning authority. And perhaps makes it even more robust from a governance perspective.
Okay. Mr. Richard, 10 to 3. Sorry, you come in, Colin, please.
Yeah, Chair, it's repeated in the main report, but I think, and Simon's already referred to it, but in 3.7, the 4 priorities, I think it's encouraging to see that focus on the 4 key issues rather than 24 things that we don't get done. So I commend that, and particularly to see priority 4 continuing to support the social housing acquisitions, which is really important for giving. Later on, we'll find there's over 600 people on the waiting list at the moment, or our housing register. So it's something really important we need to be focusing on. And Simon's already referred to the new building company offer, and I certainly would be interested in a bit more information on that, either now or later. But priority 3, consider alternative options, investment stroke acquisition, and that suggests to me buying an outside company or something like that. Is that something that refers to the building company or not? And
yes,
explanation of that.
Thank you, Chair. So, and again, each of these priorities will need to be developed into a business case and taken through the normal process. So the shareholder advisory group, and then en route to the shareholder representative. What we're saying in this business plan is our profitability is projected to increase significantly. So there's an opportunity there to either pass more of that back to the council through dividend increases and other ways, and or to consider how we might speed up the growth of the company overall. And what we've done to date, as members will know, is taken either a council service and or a concept from zero and created essentially new activity that generates surplus. There are other ways to speed up growth, and that's what this essentially talks about. The potential to look at an investment portfolio, a limited investment portfolio, and we haven't really scoped this out in any great detail, but one option would be to almost run an activity within the district, looking at local district businesses and how they are hoping to grow and what injection of cash might benefit them or how it might benefit them, on the basis that we would take a share of the equity of those businesses potentially. So that generates growth in terms of our revenue as a company, and or looking at smaller businesses. And as you say, Councillor Ball, I'm not wishing to put the cat amongst the pigeons or anything, but there are building companies in the district that might be a quicker route to achieve that new business stream if we're interested in doing it. So we're kicking those ideas around as a board, but just again to allay any potential concerns, they would have to go through a formal business case and come back to the council through its shareholder.
And although, would it also come to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee as well, or would it simply be the shareholder group that would consider it?
So it would go through the normal process, to be honest, Councillor Ball. Yeah. So my remit, I suppose, as the managing director, wearing that hat today of LWM, would be to make sure it goes through the shareholder advisory group en route to the shareholder representative, who would then make the decision in the normal way that we have
to come here before that decision.
But there's there's a potential for that, or the other way around, isn't it, for this group to call it in if they felt there was a need to do that.
Thank you. Russ, Councillor Bagger.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my head around the 3.9 in here, where there's a 20% limit on external income. So from most of the trading of the company, any profit, if you like, is profit from the council, and then the profit is returned to the council. To grow what we trade outside, as in to bring more money in, because that's just money circulating if it's from the council and back to the council. We're actually quite close to the limit. So I suppose the only way of increasing that would be to have more council services delivered so that the overall is bigger, and then you can increase. So how is that envisaged? Because you are quite close to the 20% limit.
You sure? Sorry. Yeah. So I mean, my personal view is that the TECL is not an issue for us. If LWM is so successful that it breaches that 20%, then we'd have to look at the structure of the business. So we might say part of the business that is generating significant revenue is spun off into a separate activity. But we have taken legal advice as well. The only potential risk of us being non-TECL compliant really is that were the council wanting us to take on more activities in the future, we would have to go for a normal procurement rate and compete with other businesses. That's the only potential risk. But actually, you know, if LWM feels that it is capable of taking on and competing with those businesses, there's no harm in doing that. So TECL is important because we've been instructed to remain within that 20%. But I think actually at the end of 26-27, we should be having a conversation with our shareholder that says, do you still want us to do that? Because actually we want the non-council income, as you've quite rightly pointed out, to grow. In 25-26, it's 1.2 million. In 26-27, we're already projecting 1.8 million. As that grows, that provides a larger opportunity to push money back into the council and council services. So we have to weigh continued adherence to TECL, not worrying about TECL, and generating more income that can come back into public services. That's a conversation we'd like to have with the shareholder at the right time.
Yeah. And I think I'd probably just add to that. So obviously it's 80% of its income comes from the council. The profit can be whatever it's turnover / income that's important in terms of the TECL compliance. So I think that, I suppose the question, and this will come down to both here and the advisory group and the shareholder representative, actually is that tension I think that Simon describes, which is actually where we are then going and competing against private sector companies where there isn't a market failure. Actually, do we want to step into that space? Because if there's a perfectly legitimate business operating with private capital, then I'd suggest we don't want to go and start operating there. I think where a trading company really can work very well, where there is market failure and where we think actually we're better off reinvesting those profits back into the services that we're providing to our residents. Disabled facilities grants being an absolute prime example, I think, where we've seen tremendous success, not only delivering better outcomes to residents, but also doing it at a fraction of the cost as well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor John Hill.
I wonder what criteria would you lay down for going for a building company? Why would a building company want to align themselves with you? You know, my big concern would be possible interest would be a company that was not performing well. I was looking at that as an injection. And if they weren't performing well, what expertise would you have to be able to put into that company to make it work?
I think we're in danger of getting part before the horse here. I think there's an understanding that we want to see growth in some of our the housing that we're providing, particularly around temporary accommodation, etc. Was certainly not going to be going and buying some big housing outfit. I suppose that the gap currently exists between us as a commissioning entity and an organisation that delivers that. I suppose we're just thinking at the moment, well, how do we get closer to that to start help reducing some of our costs? What we're not suggesting is we're going to go and buy persimmon, for instance.
Please don't.
Can I try and help? So the reason we said we'd like to give this some consideration is actually to a greater or lesser extent, we're already acting in that way. We're already doing adaptations in people's homes. We're refitting kitchens, we're replacing bathrooms, we're building extensions. All we're asking is to our shareholder representative, we think there might be an opportunity to do that on a wider scale, to not only to our disabled facilities grant applicants, but actually to offer that to the wider market. There's a question mark there, but as I say, there would have to be a business case developed, and that would have to stand on its own, and the shareholder representative would make a decision.
I just had to say that I actually very much for the concept. I like the concept. I like the idea. I like how it could be beneficial. I just have that little bit of a question mark over it. And the reason that I say that, no disrespect, I don't know whether I should be saying it at all, is that some of the quality of the people that Bromford have that go around putting houses right or correcting houses is quite suspect. And I'd hate to get involved with a company that just had people on board that were like that.
Probably right in your first statement, Councillor Hill.
Unlike the council recording of meetings, we that way on YouTube. Anyway, I think Councillor Miles Trent didn't want to be. No, stop fidgeting there because I can't work out whether you want to speak.
I did.
Oh, do you want to speak?
I've got. I thought of a question. Without labouring it too much on the tackle point, if you were to at some point go beyond 20%, are there any consequences of that? Any legal consequences?
Yeah, so that, I mean, yeah, so again, we've already taken legal advice about this because it's breaching 20% over a 3-year period as well. So if we breach in year one, we could have a let's stop and make sure we don't breach it again. Or there is legal advice is that strictly speaking, those services that the council currently asks us to provide could have to be reprocured. But there is no example in the UK at the moment where previous TECLs have actually, LATCOs have breached that point where they've gone through that process at all. So precedent is already there. The likelihood is that anything that the council asked us to take on going forward, we would have to compete in a normal procurement way. But we are thinking about it on an annual basis, which is why we put it in this report to make you aware of it as well.
Councillor Ray, I think did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted, obviously there's a lot of good services being delivered here. I just wanted to ask 2 questions. One was, you touched on the DFGs of delivering in a more profitable way. What sort of analysis is done to establish whether the services that are delivered through LWN, we are delivering them on a more profitable basis, more cost-effective basis than if they were in the council? Because I guess that's not just a one-off analysis. That's something that needs to be carried on ongoing. So it just seems to that, understanding that. And then secondly, in the business plan in 722.
Can I comment on that in a minute?
Okay.
Is that okay? Move on. Right. I just wanted to point out 3.4. The Urban Screening Committee is an additional opportunity for views to be sought on the objectives, activities, priorities, and financial targets the board of LWM is proposing to the council and its shareholders. We've got an additional role here. It's not just down to us. Just wanted to mention that. And I'll go through quickly, but just shout out when you get to bits. Yeah, go on.
With my question.
Yeah,
you're just holding me on my second question, but
it's
that ongoing analysis of profitability and cost effective, whether potentially some services should go back to the council because they could be. Obviously, we need to keep an eye on that ongoing because you want to drive for the interests of our residents the profitability of LWM. Yeah.
So absolutely, and I'm sure the leader will have a view on it as well. But absolutely, so we don't. And maybe we should actually think about maybe on a 3-year basis, we should have a proper look at cost, quality, benefits, and whether or not the council could be providing. But, as the managing director of this, I have a very clear remit, as do my fellow directors, and that's to deliver a profitable outcome for the organisation. If there were services that we weren't delivering profitably, then, or the council wasn't benefiting significantly from them, then I think as directors, we would all be asking that same question. Should we be continuing to do them?
And I think there's probably 2 parts to that question, isn't there? One is it doing it profitably, or is it doing it in a more valuable way? And I think is it doing it in a way that's providing better value? I think there's a question there, and that's certainly from an LWM perspective. I think from an LDC perspective, saying, well, actually, are we getting the outcomes that we require? Put the cost to one side. Is the quality of that service diminishing, and actually, do we want to bring it back in house and take it away from LWM? And I think those are, perfectly valid questions to be having, certainly around this table and elsewhere, saying if the quality of a particular service is diminishing after it's gone into LWM, then we should actually be saying, well, we'll have it back out. Thank you very much. Totally agree.
Yeah, but I think just picking up on your point, Simon, there might be a role there for every 3 years just to look at the individual services and just do some analysis of if they were operated within the council, could they be operated at same, higher or lower cost base?
Yeah.
But I appreciate you take your point. It's not just cost; it's also the quality of the service that's being delivered. But I think there might be a role there.
Yeah, Chair, so we are just finalising the service specification. So each of the activities the council buys essentially from LWM has got a very clear, it's not SLA, but it's a service specification. Those will obviously need to be reviewed on a regular basis. That's the right time to ask those types of questions. I totally agree.
Yeah. Priority 1, by the way. Anyway, I'll go through quickly to the pages. But I'll stop when I think people want to speak, but shout if not. Shout if I miss you. Page 45, 46, 7, 48. That's objectives and targets. Then the company structure. 49, 48, then 49. Page 50. 51, 52, 53, 7.22. I think.
Yeah,
That's a rate.
Help me with the employee numbers there, because there might be dual hatting going on. There might, they're not necessarily full-time equivalents. I don't know, but I always understood when I first joined the council 10 years ago that the council had about sort of 350 odd employees, and obviously those two numbers come to more than that. So it's just sort of is there okay, it's not just cost, it's about quality of service. Is there a larger number of people, FTE, who are delivering the services? Now we've got the LWM, or just understand those numbers, because obviously from that 300, 350 number, which I understood, those two numbers together is significantly in excess of that.
So, Chair, so this is headcount as opposed to FTE. But Councillor Ray is correct. If you remember, we insourced leisure services, which on their own had about 130, 150 people. So that makes up a large portion of the LWM workforce. And then we've created new activities like talent acquisition, like our planning consultancy. Those are new people. So actually the headcount in LDC has reduced a little since 2021, but the headcount in LWM has increased significantly as a result of bringing back in some of those key activities. Net, the activity as public services provided in Lichfield District has got a larger workforce delivering against that.
But and just going back to leisure, from memory now, and I think you're talking there, Simon, about when they were outsourced to Freedom Leisure, or that's right, and then you brought them in house. I think originally they would have been some employees. Yeah. So that number I've got 350 would have included the leisure services. So there is growth in headcount for sure. Yeah. As you.
Yeah. I mean, so the 350 number definitely wouldn't have included leisure stuff. We've never been that low as if you include every element of the. We certainly haven't been that low for a long time.
Okay.
I think we were probably just north of 500 if you included leisure stuff a couple of years ago.
That makes sense.
Approximately.
Yeah. I guess it just reinforces that. Maybe just having a look at the cost and the operation and whether it is cost effective compared to the previous model when it's run by the council on a 3-yearly or whatever basis.
Which area of the council would you like to remove headcount from, Councillor Ray?
No, I'm just saying that number is higher than 500 plus. It's just standing back and making sure it's value for money. I think that's a good exercise to do.
I
agree.
Martin, please.
Yeah, one of the problems very often, here you're talking about headcount. 15 years ago, you might have been talking about full-time equivalents.
Yeah.
It might actually just be easier to have expressed as full-time equivalents, and you'll find in probability that the numbers are pretty similar. I don't think there's been a huge expansion in staff of 50% plus. I really don't.
Normally have FTEs, wouldn't you, against the number? You'd normally have FTEs against the number, so you're quite right.
I think there has been some increase because of the digital services, like tenant acquisition and things like that, which I get that too.
But not 66%.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think
It's to be helpful to you.
no, I think it's a valid point, but I think my point still stands. It's just still needs to.
You could ask the managing director to express it as FTE.
Like a note, Martin's good at maths.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, don't we? Absolutely.
Okay, carrying on then, page 54.
You're gonna shout to me because this is going back a bit to 6.7.
How far back?
I haven't got page numbers. I've got them open individually. The report.
Okay,
It's 6.7 of
you are going back, yeah.
draft. Just a quick question on NEDs. It says you're searching for 3 suitably qualified non-exec directors, which sounds positive in governance terms. I just wondered if there's any update on that search.
Go free. I've no idea.
Good point. Well made. Yeah, Chair. So we currently have, I mean, most of the directors are NEDs because they're unpaid positions as well. So Suzanne Jones joined us as the new finance director. Andrea, surname I've forgotten. Thank you. Felton, who was the previous FD, has stayed on as a NED as well as an unpaid. So she is, that's 2. Then you've got myself, you've got Kerry Dove behind me, you've got Lizzie Barton. So there are currently 5 directors, NEDs. Suzanne is paid as a member of staff as well, I should say. We've had a number of interviews with some local people as well. And some of them bring interesting backgrounds, but if you go back to the 4 priorities that we've identified for this business plan for this year, we are really looking for people that can add value to those priorities rather than have a really good reputation and be local business people sort of thing. So in all honesty, although we position team reaching out to a number of people across the district, we haven't found the right add value. I don't think at this point we will continue to do that though, which is what we've been asked to do. The upside from my perspective is that there are currently 5 directors of a maximum 7, so we're going in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Page 54, that's the paragraph 8, section 8, paragraph 8.1 onwards on page 55. Projects, leisure on page 56. Stable facilities grants and the success that's in there, I think. I'm just paragraph 8.23, where we want to continue to support this market and being ambitious and so on. And just remember that Entrust at the county was going to be European wide. Well, that didn't work out, did it? Ambition is great, but keep a level head is my advice. And then LWM talent. I just wondered, with the LWM talent, that's paragraph 8.24 on page 58. With the local government organisation, is that particular challenge now with you get somebody here, but then they think, hang on, no one there, you've been abolished. I think I didn't read that bit.
No, so we've had a pretty stable turnover for the last couple of years.
So,
And we have noticed over the last 6 months, the leadership team has started to talk about it. We've talked about it with our colleagues in the union as well. We've noticed 1 or 2 people as they've exited the organisation have mentioned LGR as a concern for them as well. But if you look at the geography of the UK, I mean, there's 169 district councils. There are 21 counties. That takes up a large part of England. They're all going through the same process as us. So we're in no worse position than we are some of our those neighbouring sort of shire counties as well. I'm not at the moment overly concerned about turnover or the increase in turnover. We are already talking about a strategy. The likelihood is over the next 12 months, next 12, 24 months, we'll be going to fixed term contracts and offering that as opposed to permanent roles in order to reassure people if they're concerned. So we're trying to be proactive about it as well. But as I sit here this evening, I'm not worried at all about turnover. In fact, it's lower now than probably it has been in any of the 4.5 years I've been here.
Me then. Councillor Ray.
Yes, just on the fixed term contract point, it's the concern there. LGR comes and then it gets disbanded, and therefore is that what is that?
No, so I was speaking from for the council's perspective rather than LWM. LWM, the ownership of LWM will simply novate to the new authority.
I see.
So actually what the message we're saying to staff in LWM is actually your journey through LGR is probably much more straightforward than council staff, because every council member staff, with the exception of myself, will TUPE to the new authority, and it will only be subsequent years thereafter where things change. LWM will simply become, the lanyard will change, but the activity will remain the same unless the successor authority decides it wants to do something different.
Yeah.
But there's no TUPE requirement for LWM staff because it's the ownership of the company that simply changes, not the company. That makes sense.
But so the fixed term contract as opposed to permanent, what's that point, Simon?
Yeah, so Chair, so if we see a spike in turnover, leadership team in LDC have already talked about is the right route to go to market, and we started to talk to recruitment agencies as well, is to offer fixed term contract anyway, so that there is no concern, because people know if they're coming on a fixed term contract, there's a start and a finish date. There is no concern about the potential for TUPE or reduction with that scenario. We may have to pay slightly more for fixed term contracts, but actually if it's a key role that we need to get somebody in, we think that's a smart approach.
Can I just come in on that? And I suppose I'm just trying to understand that if you're offering fixed term contracts, so there's no possibility of TUPEing into the new organisation, does that mean that you will get less talented people going for it, or does it mean that the quality of the people will be just as good because they're perhaps anyway going from fixed term to fixed term around the country? I mean, how does that?
So just to be clear as well, Chair, so we would only offer fixed term contracts if we couldn't attract a permanent member of staff. Again, talking to recruitment agencies, they are seeing more people coming into that interim, that temporary market as well, because people want to see the outcome of local government reorganisation. Thereafter, they will go back after the permanent roles potentially. We're just reflecting the change in nature. However, if we can recruit permanently to roles, we will continue to do that.
Thank you. Page 59, LWM communication. And then LWM biodiversity on the next page, paragraph 8.36. And I think probably aware there is scepticism about, I shouldn't say more than that, but I'm just saying skeptic. We're all a bit skeptical. LWM payroll 8.47, and the reference here to the quality and complexity of IT services hold service areas back from being more efficient. I see this, you've got a challenge there. That's what I see from that. 62, financing the company potential growth. 63, the financial model. 64, 65, tax and financial support and the dividend. 8, section 8, actually I see now, and section 9, section 10 on page 66. And I like the SWOT analysis here, and so the weakness is there. The company cannot over rely on the council, and any change in circumstances may have a material effect, which I've got LGR against that particular one. But then it's also on the threats, of course. Changes in administration and political priorities, parties' priorities. And there's the conclusion. So then you've got further on, you've got the annexes there, and unless anybody's got any particular question on those annexes.
Chairman, just quickly.
Oh, so there's one about the staff cost, 2,068,000. Understood that. Yes.
Thanks, Chairman. Under threats, downturn in the economy and also increase in interest rates. Those two look particularly topical at the moment. I think we'd have to be extremely optimistic to consider that there isn't going to be a downturn in the economy. And I think interest rates were mooted to be dropping. And I think now the Bank of England has said that's highly unlikely, and they're more likely to go up than come down. So there have been quite a few changes, which have been, I think, possibly predicated by what's happened in Iran over the last month. So we are living slightly more, I think, precarious times now than perhaps we were maybe when this was written, even this report. So downturn in the economy and interest rate increases, those two look as though they are perhaps significant threats to this model. Just interested to know what you think about that, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for asking the easiest question of the night as well.
Yeah, you've had your different hats on tonight. You put your UN.
Yeah, so they are, for the very reason they're written in the report, they are threats. I suppose that the key thing to remind members, or to help members remember, is that only 18% of our income comes from external non-council related activity. So actually, I'm not overly worried about the majority of our income, because that comes from our parent company, the council. We will obviously, if there is a downturn in that income, and the income projection 1.8 million of external income, we don't think is going to be realisable, then we will have to adjust over the structure, the activity and that type of thing. And in terms of interest rates, it's where we're seeking to sell on some of our activities, like our major projects, and they become unaffordable for our clients. We have to think about cutting our cloth. But I think, like I say, we are protected by the fact that the 80% nearly of our activity is funded by the council. And so it's a smaller portion that we have to worry about massively.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
And also, there's no borrowing at the moment, and I think the plan says there's no plans to borrowing, so that that sort of reduces that, or eliminates that risk.
Mitigate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Right, Colin, yeah.
Page 69, say the governance arrangements. We've been through this before, and we've come up with the idea that I think I certainly reluctantly accepted the shareholder advisory group, which could be a balanced political grouping, talking to the shareholder representative. But what this suggests is that the full council directs the shareholder representative in what needs to happen. So for clarity, does that mean all decisions ultimately that LWMTS does are directed by the council, giving instructions to the shareholder representative, or does LWTMS board operate independently of that process? And that's just a question for clarity, because
I wonder if that's a political question, actually.
It can operate. It has to operate independently in terms of its directors and the duty that the directors have to the interests of that company. I think the concept of and the reason why we've got full council involved in terms of the shareholder advisory group and committee, whatever it's called, is that that group doesn't have direct sort of power over the shareholders or the directors. Clearly, it has to be an advisory group just because of the nature of the work that's being undertaken, and just the reporting mechanism back to full council is through them. But certainly, full council, I think, is not directing the work of that organisation on a day-to-day basis. It's setting high-level outcomes. How it achieves those within parameters is set by council, but day-to-day operations is down to the directors, definitely not down to full council. Otherwise, we might as well bring it all back into the council.
I take the point, but perhaps that diagram could be represented slightly differently somehow. It reads at the moment as if full council is directing the shareholder representative, taking advice from the shareholder advisory group into the LWM board.
Oh yeah, go on. Yeah, switch the other way around and make it clear it's clear.
Yeah. I mean, so LWM prepares a business case, a business plan on an annual basis, and a budget which has to be approved by the shareholder representative. I take the point on the diagram. What we're trying to show here is that the company is owned by full council. The council is the shareholder, and the shareholder exercises that activity through the shareholder representative. I can put some narrative in as well to explain how that works.
I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. But again, as I say, we write a business plan that has to be approved by the shareholder representative. We cannot deviate from that business plan unless the shareholder representative gives us authority to do so. So that's where the control mechanism comes from.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think that's the end of that then. That item. We made our views known, asked for questions and that. So the committee has provided comment and feedback, and I don't think we did reflect on the effectiveness. The wrong one here. You tell me. All right, we'll start again. I get to the right bit. I was trying to say As for reviewing the business plan 2026-27 and provide feedback to the shareholder representative. That's all I wanted to say, really. Yeah.
Very much.
So, the next item then is the approach. I like the title here, the approach to empty home. I like that. Doug, you, Councillor Pullen, going to?
I am I'm
Yeah.
stepping in for Councillor Farrell this evening.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Super substitute.
multitasking, jack of all trades, I think they say, don't they? Right, so this I'm joined by Jack and Anthony as well. The empty homes policy, I understand that we currently have in place today has existed since 2016. Clearly, you know, we have an interest in ensuring that we challenge owners of empty homes to make sure they're brought back into use. We've got a variety of ways and means that we can make that happen. I think there's clearly a balance of how you want to exercise those powers, how we can exercise those powers versus how we might want to as well. There's clearly a public interest in allowing people to own property and do with it as they wish. We've also got, I think at last count, 638 is the number, forget, of people on our housing register as well. So anything that we can do to encourage people to get their empty homes back into usage is clearly a positive thing for us. So I think this, we don't have a new policy. There isn't a new policy that's being proposed, and this isn't on the cabinet work programme, but I do understand that Councillor Hall or this committee has asked for the empty homes policy to be reviewed, and you have the version of the policy there in front of you. As ever with council policies, clearly there's two parts to it. There's one is the policy, and then also is actually how we're enforcing that policy, and that will depend on our given priorities at any given time and our resources as well. So I suppose the ask is for you to feedback on the existing policy, how you think it's being implemented today. Grateful for your views. If Anthony or Jack has anything you want to add to that.
The only thing I'd probably add is we've put information into the report just to show how we compare with England, West Midlands, Staffordshire. We've used council tax base information, which is quite robust. Every council has to provide it. It's signed off by a section 151. There is an interest in actually completing one because it sets, it's part of this council tax setting. It's the data that Action on Empty Homes use in their assessment as well. So, and we've given you over a 10-year period, and I think, I must admit, until we did the analysis, I wasn't aware just how low in proportion the council is compared to the other comparators. That's all I wanted to add, really.
I just wanted to draw your attention to 1.5 before we go any further. It is important to highlight that most empty homes are transactional. I do like that term there, in that they remain empty for as long as it takes to sell or complete repairs before reoccupation. Complications. I mean, my previous life and in this life, we've had homes that were left, and then you had to track somebody down in Australia to find out, you know, what you can do about the building and so on. So I know it's complicated. I'm going to go through it by section shortly, but two hands went up earlier. Yeah, Councillor Trent.
Yeah, Chairman, my point really is that the number of people with second homes in Lichfield is quite small. It's only 0.2%. And I noticed that obviously in keeping with lots of other local authorities, there is a premium which is charged on their council tax. And in our case, I think it's 100%. I'm just wondering what is the point of that, in the sense that is it meant to deter people from having a second home, or is it a cash raising measure, or is it both? Honestly,
from what I remember at the time, especially if you lived in Cornwall or Devon, you were particularly keen to not to have half the village empty each time, but for Who else wants to say?
So it's
Incentives.
certainly not a cash raising mechanism if you see how much it's raising on an annual basis, but I would also say certainly in the last few months, the cabinet member does now have the decision making authority to, along with the revenue and benefits team, to carve out exemptions, but to deal with those on a case by case basis.
Be waived, can it?
And the case is that that's being unpicked slightly. I think it was perhaps slightly too heavy handed in terms of the behaviours that it was disincentivising. So there's been a rolling back of that.
Thank you. I think we're on the same page. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Back to Trent, Martin.
My question was on premiums as well. I don't know whether you could pick it up late.
Okay, if you do now, then I'll.
So at 3.12, it provides the chronology of how the premiums have gone up over the years. I just wondered whether have we encountered any issues with them actually being paid, or any issues with collection of premiums? Is it actually doing what is envisaged?
If I'm honest, look, and I think there's a reason that we're looking at and to slightly roll back on that. I think I think it works really well in, as the chair said, where you have villages that are every second house is owned by somebody from out of town. So Cornwall, Devon, great examples. Well, actually, that's impacting on the local economy. It's impacting on locals' ability to buy houses and stay in the area and work in the area. Clearly, there's a public policy benefit to that. That's not Lichfield, quite frankly, and I think actually we don't have a great holiday home economy here. The vast majority, I think, of people that had the premium applied were really just people who perhaps were working in two locations, or who lived in a couple of different areas, and actually just wasn't having the effect, the intended effect. So hence the rolling back of that. Clearly, where there's long-term empty properties that are never lived in, being run down, then we do want to try and get those back into usage. But where people are actually is their lifestyle, that's not the sort of behaviour that we want to deterring.
So I was just going to add a couple of other points to it. So my understanding of revenues and benefits is that where a premium's applied, virtually everybody pays it. And I suspect some of this is where you look at the reasons why people keep the house. There's quite an emotional attachment with some of them, and therefore they will pay the premium because they want to retain the home. So they don't have particular issues in the collection of it. I think the other point I'd make is, as the policies have been applied, we've come across issues and challenges. I think what the council has done is applied changes to the policy, and Councillor Pullen mentions there is an exceptions policy now in place with the cabinet member for ones you couldn't envisage, because I think some of these challenges we wouldn't envisage them when the policy was written. I think we've learned from that as we've gone through it, but they're the minority rather than the rule.
Okay. Colin, Councillor Ball, please.
But when I first read these reports, I thought there was discrepancy in the numbers, because the policy set out in the appendix on page 88 talks about 985 empty homes, but that's, when you look at it, that was on the council tax register of 2015, whereas today it's 700 and something, if I find it again, yes, 735 on the council tax register of 2025. So what I'm confused about is, I think 18 months ago, or maybe 2 years ago, James Johnson and Lizzie Barton came to us with the cabinet member with possible changes to the empty homes policy, which we reviewed and made recommendations on. And that's what I'd expected to come back tonight for a final review before it went to cabinet for a decision. So I'm puzzled by the leader telling us this evening of a plan for a change. Now, have I lost the plot here? Is my memory wrong? Does no one else remember James Johnson and Lizzie Barton, the cabinet member, coming with some proposals on empty homes, some of which were quite radical and interesting. But we're now seeing a policy which is 9 years out of date. There may be others on this committee who weren't on the committee then, I think. But that's certainly my recollection.
Yeah, I need looking for me to help you, but I can't at the moment. I'll have to research. Last time I did research, I got told off by the chair of scrutiny.
But I think it would be worth exploring that point. And as I say, I may be wrong, but I wasn't on the council in 2016, so I haven't commented on that at that point. I've only been on the council since 2018. But I certainly recall us having a detailed discussion as part of the housing and homelessness strategy. Empty homes featured on that, and James Johnson came along, and it's good to see the idea that we did have a 6-month trial to look at ways of increasing it, because it's quite clear if you were just to use the numbers, we could rehouse everybody on our housing register if all the empty homes were brought back into use and people housing them. It's not as simple as that, because getting them into use is a mammoth task. And it's not successful much anywhere across the country. But I think it might be worth going back and exploring if Lizzie's still there, obviously James.
Whatever the minutes were agreed at the time, that's what the record would say.
Yeah.
You look that up.
I think, yeah, to your point, Councillor Ball, certainly some work was done around second home premiums. There was some work that was undertaken at that point. I think, I suppose my point at the top of this presentation around it not being on the cabinet work programme is simply to Anthony's point earlier on. When you look at comparator councils, we're not an anomaly. Sure. It's not way out there. We're actually doing a lot better than some of our other councils. Now, just because we're doing better than other councils doesn't mean that we should stop and say, well, that's fine because we're better than others. That still doesn't make it okay. I do think, and I'm being really clear with Cabinet at the moment, we have got a matter of months before the government are going to pull around the shutters on LDC Inc. and say, right, that's it. You can't do anything more. So our work programme for the next 10 months is very clearly defined and some very clear outputs. This isn't on there.
No, I take the point. Yeah. I totally understand why that's the case. And but I just wonder, going back to 18 months, 2 years ago, whatever happened to the work that was done there? Maybe it's reflected here in these changes to the premiums that people pay. But my recollection, it's quite vague, I have to say, because it was a long time ago, and I've slept several times since then. There was some debate about using compulsory powers, about using innovative ways of doing the repairs and billing people afterwards and that kind of stuff, which is reflected in this original 2016 document. But I think some of those proposals, from my memory, were a bit more radical than what's in this current document. But I accept that it may not be possible now, given the short time constraints, to do much about it. But it's disappointing that the work that was done then doesn't seem to have been followed up. Perhaps it's because James Johnson decided to go off to the Bahamas.
I might step in there, Chair. Just to say, this is kind of what the trial was about, but 6 months just isn't enough time. What we've realised is how much time it takes to do this kind of work, and as I'm sure many members will agree, we kind of prioritise places where people are already living. So it has been done, but it does take a lot of time.
Okay. No, thank you. That's fine.
Well, let's go through the rest of the report for May. 3.7 would just naturally draw to our attention how well off we seem to be with regard to the rest of the work. Indeed, statistically, those figures. I did look at national figures a while ago on that, although it's rather difficult to really get my head around it, all of them, but see how successful people were, councils were. But on the graphs there, you've got 3 graphs. The first one there, we seem to be in line with the rest of the graphs, but I just wonder if there's if there's clarity on the second graph, analysis 3, where our line goes up there as opposed to others in the graph, and then on the next graph again we change it in 2021 going up there. I wonder if you're able to throw some light on that, or is it just me just need to spend more time understanding it?
I'll be honest, Chair.
Ridiculous question. I mean,
I'll be honest, I don't understand the question. Anthony might be.
I just said, yeah, he might be a ridiculous question.
So all of these charts, either empty homes, second homes, or total as a proportion of total each area. I think each area is going to have its unique circumstances. You know, there might be a specific reason, but I think what I didn't appreciate, and I think what the first graph shows, is there was a spike with COVID in that period. Maybe more people were at home and were reporting.
I'm interested in that graph. I'm really interested in the next 2 graphs.
Yeah, so
there's a difference. That was it.
And what we've tried to do on these graphs is show when premiums were implemented, because what you would probably expect to see is a premium has an impact on numbers. And I think COVID does distort it a little bit, but you can see certainly with the second homes, we implemented in April, there was a drop, and I think even at English level there was a drop. So you can make an argument, and it probably needs a longer period of time after the premium was in. The premium has had an impact on the number of second homes. Now, whether that is genuine, people have sold them off, or whether that is there's more exemptions been implemented, I don't know. We'd need to look into that more, but I think there's probably a clear trend that numbers went up during COVID and then settled down the next 2 years, and we're probably into 24, 25 where we've got more realistic numbers.
Again, on the last graph, you see it's different from the rest.
The last graph is a total of long-term empty and second home.
Is it different from England, from the West Midlands? Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Well, as I say, it's quite difficult to answer that question, because as I say, you've got some authorities are introducing premiums, some aren't. Some will be introducing them at different times. So if you argue the premiums have an impact on the numbers, then ours have dropped, whereas others have gone up. Now, it may be that others have decided not to implement the premiums. If you argue that is what's driving the behaviours here.
Councillor Marshall's got the answer, I think.
Chairman, I think looking at the scale of the y-axis, it's a very, very minor increase, although it's exaggerated by the scale of the y-axis, as I say. So we're going from 0.7% up to 1.1% at one point, and that's the extreme. You could say that the average sort of increase is up to about 0.9%. So going from 0.7% to 0.9%, if you like, which is still a very, very small increase when taken in absolute terms. But of course, the way that the graph is written or presented suggests quite a stark increase. And if I'm honest with you, that is not the case. I think we need to put that in perspective. It's actually a very small increase.
So if we look at absolute numbers, total dwellings on the valuation list is 40,000, 49,000. Yeah, so it's 0.2% of a very small number anyway.
Okay. Shall we chat? That's it now, really. All right. Page 81 there, 3.12 onwards. And over on the page.
Yeah, 3.14 onwards, as in the trial and the enforced sale procedures. I do remember when I was on R&L having discussions about it there, and you know, I know in my ward there is one house that's been empty for long time over 20 years and causes problems every so often to the neighbours. And of course the discussion was about officer time, because it is actually quite to prioritise the officer time on there. So I suppose there's 2 bits to the question. One, is it feasible that those are going to proceed, other than obviously the trial was quite short and it needs a longer time for the trial? And if so, do we have enough officers, or is it going to then deplete other areas of enforcement?
Right question, Jack will answer it.
There's two aspects. Yes, it is time consuming, and yes, I'm sure we could do more with it, more officers.
Yeah.
There's another aspect, which is the technique of the forced sale. You're actually incurring costs to the council, and you know, I can think of a property where it's a listed building. You could probably sink £200,000 into one single property. That money has to be found. Of course, with the forced sale, you recover that money down the line, but that's certainly, you know, there's a cash flow issue there. We have had one case where we incurred several £1,000s worth of costs. You need to give them an opportunity to pay before you go the forced sale route. Gentleman paid. The house still stands empty. So, you know, it's not a guaranteed route anyway. There are other councils that go the compulsory purchase route. Derby, for example, back in last year, they were looking at 9 properties to purchase. The total value of that was about 1.2 million. So money obviously comes into it more than just the resources for us going out and finding the people and trying to take action on them.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, but also it's very galling for the neighbours and everybody to know that this house continues to have problems, and actually it'd be better for somebody to be living in it. But yeah.
Okay, Councillor Young.
Mine is also on 3.14, 3.16. Is there a breakdown of figures you can provide later on? If they have about how many notices, legal notices have been served, and also all of each step. You should see the number of these. That's okay.
Chair, I can provide a spreadsheet to members.
Just one more question. For just going back really quickly to 3.310, 3.10, it talks about why homes are being left emptied in district. I'm just a bit concerned at the moment because apartments, you know, with cladding and an issue, property prices are going down as well. Would that mean, or do you foresee that there'll be more empty properties being on sale longer and also being empty as well? So basically, there's a lot of apartments or properties are being on, so that's a sale. So that could be a reason why it's empty. But then property market, I understand it's not very active at present, especially with apartments, you know, and people want to sell these apartments or houses. It means that these properties are going to be empty for a longer term because property prices are dropping. That's going to taking effect with empty homes figure, I understand. So would that be a reason? I mean, is it something that your side could work? I
guess I could answer that by just saying it's difficult to impact on the property market. If a property is perfectly habitable, but it's just for sale, there's very little we can do to impact on that.
Use it for something like temporary accommodation or something like that. Like,
but then we'd have to be forcing the sale of it.
Okay.
But if there's no cost to us, we can't force the sale, then it'd be a compulsory purchase order, and I don't think you'd not enough reason.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, I just question for you, Jack, with your experience in that during that trial, how many of the empty properties are there because just inertia, not because they're caught in some legal battle or you're waiting for probate? It's just inertia. And then what's in my mind is there a potential service, and maybe you might be are we doing this already, where like we can introduce you to an estate, you can get it valued, we can introduce you to buyers. If you need some work doing it to put a new kitchen in, we can introduce you to local buildings. So like almost like a project management type service where it's like it's not stuck, it's just inertia, you know, like someone's got to pick it up, and can we make it easier for the property owner to take it forward to market?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we have looked at this. The property where we'd ramped up quite a lot of costs. There were some mental health issues there. He moved in with his mother, and we were offering to go to auctioneers and facilitate that for him. Seemed to be on board, and then obviously there's people's personal lives and their reasons for wanting to keep a property are personal to them, and he decided to back out and pay the bill. So yeah, we're not. I think you'll find that most certainly long-term properties is either issues with probate or the sentimental attachment there. And it's so hard to get around that by saying, come on, we'll just facilitate this, we'll help you sell it, because they don't want to sell it. And I know one case where a gentleman owns 3 properties. You could argue he's a property hoarder, and there are people that think, it's an investment for me, it's going to be my nest egg when I come to retire. So they want to keep onto it for those reasons. So it can be difficult. We are not against it, we do offer it. But there's a lot of reasons why people don't act on it.
And I think if we just add to that, Jack, I think we all will accept in every district up and down the country, there is always going to be a residue of houses that are empty. As we've said there, ours is much lower than comparators. And I think we probably all agree, we'd have 10 Jacks going out there all the time, and teams looking at how we can progress them. But it will always be the case that these properties are the complex ones, where there are very, very deep-rooted complex issues, and it's become a money pit for a tax burden to us.
That's what behind my question. If Jack, you said the percentage is 50%. They're sellable. It's just someone in the family hasn't picked it up and run with it. There might be a service you could offer, but I thought I knew the answer to the question. But it's not. It's other reasons are why they're.
And I think I take Leona's point here. Perhaps some elements of the housing market are starting to chill slightly, but I think from a regional and national perspective, we'd still say we've got a fairly buoyant property market. It's not we're not a sort of a forgotten seaside town somewhere where people don't want to come buy property. Lichfield relatively is still very buoyant, so we don't even have those sorts of challenges really, certainly compared to some of our neighbours.
Okay. Okay, I mean 3.717, they're dealing with property that is quite resource intensive. Everyone gets an idea there why it is so resource intensive. I mean, people have human rights, and it is their property, so it's not. We're not France or China where you can just. Rest of the report. Any questions there? Not. I don't really want to go through the empty homes policy of 2016 particularly. I did notice on one of the policies I looked at elsewhere in other local authorities, it's got a appendix 1 proposed key performance indicators and reports, and this one for example is increase the number of empty properties brought back into beneficial use, 25, 26, 15 properties, 26, 27 onwards, 20 properties per year. I'm just telling you about the policy, I'm not telling you what the result of that was. I look forward to a bit more research on that, but I think that is missing perhaps from the 2016. It doesn't say what our targets might be, unless we're just too nervous about putting figures in there, because we've just spent some time talking about how difficult it is. But let's leave that there in the air for people to lose sleep on. Anthony, why are you hiding? Get on your hands there. You don't want to get involved.
Just reading the
right.
part of it.
Are there any other questions? If not, Councillor Trent, Mark Trent, yeah.
At the end of the report, in the table, it notes crime and safety issues, and I suppose this links back to what Councillor Braga was touching upon in his remarks about empty properties potentially, if they're not very well maintained, can increase those risks. It says there, and it struck me that was a really important point. And I know a lot of this. Or what's driving it is empty properties. They could be well used, or could be better used, and that would really help. So, Councillor Braga was saying the impact on community of those houses being in disrepair. Just wondered, because that's mainly an observation, but if there's a question there, it was just, can you give us any sense of how many, what percentage of these properties are in poor repair? Is is that only the minority of them? Even if they are empty, they're generally in good repair, or, can you give us a sense of what sort of the scale of that problem is?
Yeah, in terms of percentages, no, but you have 2 different types. You'll have the ones that are reasonably well maintained, whether it's by gardeners and that sort of thing, because the owner doesn't want to draw attention to it, if you like. And then there's others where they're just left to rack and ruin. And, you know, we do deal with those symptoms with the rats, the waste, the overgrown nature of them. And that's in part what ramps up the costs that theoretically we can then force the sale of the property on. But yeah, it varies essentially, but I don't have percentages on how many are in which category.
Thanks. Councillor Marshall.
Just a question, Chairman, please. Do we ever come across properties which have been left vacant for some time and then they've been used as cannabis farms?
Not.
We haven't come across any of those.
We often find fly-tips of cannabis farm paraphernalia, never with any evidence other than that, and the police are never interested in any of it. But okay. I've never found one of that.
That's right. We had if I may just say so, we had a property in our village about 4 or 5 years ago, which was an empty property. The owner was renting it out and didn't realise that the tenant was living there and was tending a cannabis farm quite successfully as well. And it's been happening under everybody's noses and nobody knew about it. So these operations can be extremely covert. They can be going on and no one's aware of it. So I just wonder whether we'd ever had any evidence of that sort of thing happening in vacant properties. Okay, thank you.
Probably paying their council tax and we think it's
How did you think the county councillor felt when he discovered one of its industrial units, the other few of those, was being used as a cannabis farm? I'm not really sorry for him on that one. Yeah. Well, thank you for that then.
Thank you.
We've done as much as we can on that, and all we've done is really find out how difficult it is, and that's my view from all the research I've done and other local authorities, and how slow the success rate is really. But thank you for coming along and answering those questions.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got one last item now, which is the works programme.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is the work programme. Obviously, this covers items we've looked at during the year. And there is also a column there, as you can see, for items that we are due to look at in 2026, 2027. That includes all of the normal items on health matters and notes from task groups. Items that are there for yearly review, such as the compliments, complaints, MPFOI and fairness report, and the annual review of ONS that we saw tonight are, of course, on there, along with the reports into LWMTS and the MTFS. But it's a chance for the committee to highlight and flag up anything they might want to see in the work programme for next year.
Yeah, well, what I've asked for is the local government review to be on every item, even if there's not anything to be discussed. At least it's I just wondered why my name was in pencil though on my papers here for health matters, but get back to me on that one.
It is on pen on.
No, it's just pencil, Yeah. Some get it. They get paid. They get paid to get my jokes. Some people.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm misreading this, but seems the Burntwood Health Centre obviously is a big ongoing issue, and we've tried to tackle it. Isn't down for the next council year, and I would suggest perhaps it ought to be.
Absolutely, that is something we can put on for next year as well. Hopefully the ICB and the county council will come to that. That is the key fundamental issue in having that one come back. But absolutely, yeah, you're quite right.
I say on the second page there, the local government reorganisation there, and I want that on each one, but not to do to death or anything, but because there are things happening. Can I just ask members, do they understand that they will need to seek re-election, or at least their election period will come to an end in next year, May next year? Is that your understanding?
At the moment. That's the understanding at the moment.
Well,
government may change their mind.
Well, that's the chief executive, if he has any more information on that.
Yeah. Can I come to the table?
Yeah. I insist you come to the table, yeah.
Yeah, so I did some, we had a brief conversation with the chair and I
thought it now.
Sorry?
Spot it now.
Yes. Top of the stairs as well. So I've got some facts for members, but actually that assumption is incorrect. So what happens in May 2027? There will be no district council elections in Lichfield.
Is that right?
However, But there will be in other parts of Staffordshire, so Tamworth and Cannock are what they call thirds councils, and those will go ahead as is normal. And likewise, Newcastle, I think, is all out. Is that right?
That's this year.
Sorry, this year.
This year.
2026. Sorry, yeah, yeah. Sorry, that's this year. Yes. But in May 27 next year, there will be no district council elections. Parish council elections will still take place. And in May 2027, elections will also be held for the new shadow unitary councils, whatever the government's decision is, and which will then prepare them for the move to a new unitary system in Staffordshire. And on April the 1st, 2028, which is called vesting day for the new authorities, the shadow councils become the new unitary authorities, and all county and district councils are abolished on that day, and all functions of those county and district councils are transferred to the new bodies. So the period between May 2026 and May 2028, district and county councils and councillors continue to deliver services as normal, and shadow authorities work in parallel, preparing budgets, staffing structures, governance arrangements and service transfer plans for the new authorities. So for district councillors here that were elected in May 2023, or since then through by-elections, your term will continue until April 2028, when the district council is abolished. This is an extended term designed to maintain stability during the transition period that I've just talked about. As I say, councillors did this year in May 2026 in other parts of Staffordshire, so Tamworth and Cannock and Newcastle, will have a shorter period until vesting day on April the 1st, 2028. Does that make sense, Chair?
Yes, no, absolutely.
What's the vesting date?
Can I just say that what didn't book any holiday in May?
Yeah.
So I thought this was this way it's going to work. The only time I've ever had a holiday in May, because this council's elections elsewhere, you help out in those, was when my stepson was getting married, and there was no elections here, and that was it. So, Colin, what do you want to know?
Well, just for clarity, so the parish council elections go ahead in 2027.
Yes.
And then the new councils become live in 2028.
So,
Half live, isn't it?
yeah, so they're called a shadow authority because they actually activity starts during 2027, but they are vested in 2028.
Does that mean there will then be a year's difference going forward between unitary councils and parish councils? Or because I think that would be very expensive for parish councils to have elections outside the cycle, and I'm just trying to make sure that the cycle won't be breached.
Yes, so Chair, I generally don't know the answer to that. So the structural change order that creates the new authorities will determine what the first term is. So in other parts of the country where LGR has happened, that first term has been for a 5-year period, and then it's reverted to a 4-year period. Okay. We need to see what the government says during the structural change order, which will be, I think, going through Parliament starting the end of this year and likely to come out of that process early next year.
And I suppose I should declare an interest now as a parish councillor. Others here are the same. Can we make sure that we make our position clear as a district council to government that there should be no breach in the fact of parish councils and unitary councils elections happening at the same time on that same sequence? Because that would be terrible, particularly for some smaller parishes who find it very difficult to hold elections.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, that has already been raised on calls with the Minister from the very, very outset. And there are parish councils up and down the country who frankly would face bankruptcy if they had to fund their own elections themselves. So if I'm really honest, I don't think that had been considered by the reaction of the Minister and some of the civil servants on the call. I think they are absolutely considering it now, because, as you say, the financial pressure that it would put on parish councils is just too great.
Martin, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just observe that the government's current plan is subject to change, because some of us will remember that they cancelled 30 elections last year that are now taking place in May because they realised how unpopular cancelling elections is.
No, that was a request from the district council, wasn't it?
Yeah, but sorry, the point is, our term currently ends in 27. They think they're going to extend it for a year.
Yeah.
The populace may not agree, may actually demand the right to vote next May.
They can demand it. Okay.
And the government may well give in again.
Sorry,
Just make the point.
I'm not sure if this is,
Certain.
this is fully the function of scrutiny, but of course, there will have been elections, because there will have been elections to the unitary authority, so they're not cancelling
Not
them.
next year. Next May,
Yeah,
the cancelling
27.
election.
27, there will be elections to the unitary authority. And so the people will be able to vote for their new council. It is only the interim where the two are parallel
But we have no status.
that we won't be re-elected for 11 months.
Yeah,
So it is a bit different from, and I understand what you're saying about Cannock and
I just
Tamworth
find
and
government suddenly deciding very late in the process, oh, well, we'll just abolish that set of elections, stick another set in, when no one actually knows the shape of the new authorities now. It's subject to change, is all I say.
I think that's the same sort of problems in 2023 under Boris Johnson when
I'm not saying it's perfect.
Other local authorities had the same sort of problems. I think it is a headache for government when they do change, but we've only been here 50 years, right? So what happened years ago with parallel and shadow elections, but yeah, we'll get through it though. We'll get through it. Just can I just say I'm very grateful for you getting that information to show people how good scrutiny can be and get information why we want the LGO on there regularly for this sort of information. You can't find it on the local government association website under frequently asked questions or in government papers.
I was wholly unprepared, which is why the leader pointed out I was talking about the wrong year at the beginning. So I apologise. I guess the only other point I'd make, I suppose, out of interest is that some of the current cohort of councillors may wish to stand in the shadow election. So the complexity of having a parish, a district, and a shadow for the voter, I suppose, might be part of government's thinking. But then I'm not going to disagree with what you said, Councillor.
Electors have coped with more than 3 elections simultaneously in the past.
Same candidates. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
In my lifetime, so.
I have been all 3 as well all at the same time. Miles.
Sorry, I may have missed this, but what were you quoting from the information?
Don't tell him. Knowledge is power, Simon.
So when I bumped into
actually to do this in spare time, I'm going to tell him.
I wrote the book on it. No, so when I bumped into the chair on the stairs yesterday, I reached out to a couple of neighbouring of council chief execs as well. So this is our view, and it looks at what's happened in the past rather than what has been published for Staffordshire. There is nothing published, as you've quite rightly said, for the LGA for any of the areas at the moment. We can also see what happens in Surrey, and I think tomorrow we're expecting the decision on the priority areas, so the next batch. And hopefully, as that works its way through Parliament, clarity will be afforded to us, I suppose, for the structural change orders.
Okay. No, I say I'm very grateful for that and the questions you've asked, and you can see it's going to be quite exciting, that particular item, and then in the next few meetings. So thank everybody for that, and yeah, good night.
Thank you.